What happens when a star dies? As the sun grows old, it will become smaller, brighter and hotter. In 3 billion years, it will be 40% brighter and so hot it will evaporate our oceans. In another 2 billion years, its core will collapse and it will expand to form a red giant. So massive, it will engulf the Earth. When this red giant sun finally dies, it will throw off most of its mass in a huge nebula of gas and dust. And all that will remain is a dense core, called a white dwarf, which will slowly cool over billions of years. However, not all stars behave like the sun. Other stars, called red dwarfs, use their fuel so economically that they may last for 1 trillion years or more. And at the other end of the spectrum, the biggest stars, hundreds of times bigger than the sun, burn their fuel very quickly. They live fast and die young. It's these bigger stars that produce the strangest results when they die. They literally go out with a bang, exploding in violent supernovas, amongst the most spectacular events in the universe. Supernova explosions might be spectacular, but they could also be very dangerous for us humans. If one occurred within 25 light years of Earth, it would kill all life on the planet. The ozone layer would be destroyed, bathing us in lethal doses of radiation. Probably best to stay indoors if this happens. These supernova explosions can have two outcomes. Firstly, the material left behind can collapse to form a super-dense neutron star. A neutron star is only about the size of a city like London, but can weigh twice as much as our sun. But when the largest stars of all explode, the remaining neutron core is compressed in a fraction of a second into a singularity. This is infinitely small, smaller even than an atom, and its gravitational pull is so massive, nothing can escape from it, not even light. This is a stellar black hole. They are the strangest and most destructive forces in nature. Anything straying near a black hole will be sucked in and destroyed.
We're going to fire a bullet into it and see if we can see anything interesting.
It's not that usual to use your Sunday lunch as target practice, but anatomically, pigs are a pretty close match to us, which makes them excellent stunt doubles.
3, 2, 1.
Wow, that was loud. That's a tiny, tiny hole.
Did it go through? That's the question. And yes, it did.
Yes, it did.
For soft targets like flesh, bullets find it very easy just to punch their way through.
It looks like the 900-mile-per-hour bullet has ripped a clean line through the pig. But because we can't see what happens on the inside, we're going to fire at some transparent ballistics gel developed by scientists to represent human tissue. All we can see left is this one trail, this cavity that the bullet has left as it's passed through.
What the bullet's doing is that it's transferring some of its momentum to the gelatin, and that results in a temporary cavity being formed.
So that means if you're shot, you're left with this hole that we can see, but you've also had internal damage from your flesh kind of expanding and then falling back in on itself. To stand any chance of protecting our soft flesh from a speeding bullet, you'd expect a bulletproof vest to be rock hard, but that isn't always the case. This is light and it's really flexible as well.
Well, the reason for that is that this is made of multiple layers of Kevlar, which is essentially made from a plastic, and it's a soft, tight body armour. So let's see what it does. 3, 2, 1.
Right, well look, that's where it went through. You can see it.
That's where it struck.
Did it stop the bullet?
Yes, it did.
What a material. What a material, a plastic that can stop bullets.
Now, if you think of when you kick a football to a football net, the football net catches the football.
Yeah.
And that's what the Kevlar is doing, except that in this case, the net is very, very strong, and that's what catches the bullet.
Although Kevlar is very effective against handgun fire, it's pretty much useless against rifle rounds.
Yeah. 2 holes.
Gone through. Time to bring out the daddy of all bulletproof vests.
So what we've got here, we've got a faceplate, and this faceplate would have a ceramic tile inside.
Ceramic, so what, like your kind of plates at home?
So not dissimilar.
It seems we've upgraded from a football net to a dinner plate, and it's going to have to be some piece of crockery to stop a 2,000 mile/hour rifle bullet. It's gone about half the way through the ceramic. It's not come through the back. So that sniper rifle bullet went straight through the Kevlar, but it didn't make it through this. The fact is, there are thousands of different types of ceramic, and the stuff inside the vest is nearly as hard as diamond.
As the bullet comes into contact with the ceramic, the energy of the bullet is being spread over that much larger area.
So the Kevlar is like a football net catching the ball,
Quite.
and this is like just putting up a riot shield and it
That's
just
right, like
bouncing
a big
straight off.
disruptor that it can't, can't penetrate through.
Good stuff. Wow. Pretty impressed with that. Sniper rifle, and you're still going to be alive. Death. The final destination. The great equaliser. Whether prince or pauper, we all end up in the same place. In the ground. We used to think the definition of death was the heart-stopping beating, but that was before we could measure brain waves. Now we know it's actually the brain that makes us alive or dead, because it's the brain that regulates blood pressure, controls heart rate, and sends the hormones which keep all the organs working. But what happens then? When the heart is dead, the brain is dead, you are dead. Well, brace yourselves, guys, because things are going to get a little bit gross. First, the body dries out and the cells shrink, which makes it actually look like your hair and your fingernails keep growing. The body also drops 1.5 degrees Fahrenheit per hour. So a body that's 91.9 degrees Fahrenheit, around 33 and a bit degrees centigrade, has been dead for 4 hours. Then, from a few hours to 2 or 3 days later, rigor mortis starts. It begins in the head and moves sequentially down the body as out-of-control enzymes thin the cell walls and allow calcium to flood in and clench the muscles. From that point, the muscles are never released because the body isn't generating any energy to unhook them. After 2 to 3 days, these out-of-control enzymes, which used to be used to help us digest things but now aren't being kept in order by our immune system, eventually break down the body's cell walls completely. Nutrient-filled liquid flows out, flowing into tiny gaps in the body and causing the skin's layers to separate, bubble, and slide off. The bacteria, which used to help us operate when we were alive, are now left unchecked by our immune system. They feast on this cell liquid. They reproduce wildly in what is for them a heavenly environment. So bacteria-rich areas like the lungs, digestive system, mouth and brain break down first. And get this, the digested liquid brain will actually froth out through the mouth and nose within the first 2.5 weeks after death. Now we get to flies. If they have access, flies will lay their eggs at all the entrances of the body, and over the next 3 weeks, maggots develop, grow and feed. And the life stage of the maggots into flies is also another way of determining a corpse's time of death. By 3 weeks, all this eating and reproduction by bacteria causes the usual production of gases to go through the roof. This bloats the stomach big time, as well as other particularly bacteria-rich areas such as the tongue, which is so swollen it sticks out of the mouth. It also bloats the penis and testes, which can swell to the size of small footballs. Eventually, the stomach tears and your innards will become outards. Now, if your body has been laid on the Earth's surface, it will take just 4 weeks for you to completely putrefy and be reduced to a puddle of matter and bones. If you're in a coffin, the integrity of your body might hold out until water seeps in, but then you'll also putrefy pretty quickly. Of course, temperature extremes can change the process. In the desert, you might become so dehydrated that the bacteria can't breathe so well. You'd probably maintain your skin even though the inner cell walls would collapse. I guess you'd become a kind of mummy. In the Arctic, you'd stop just before the rigor mortis stage, as all the reactions such as enzymes breaking things down and calcium flooding in would be stopped by the liquid in your body freezing. As soon as you're thawed out though, they will all kick in with a vengeance. In fact, that delay in the chemical cascade that follows death is why people rescued from technical death in icy conditions have been known to have been brought back to life. Amazingly, scientists in China have just found a way of making atoms glow to track this decomposition process. So soon we're going to be able to neon tag an atom in a fly's body and watch it time-lapse as it decomposes, broken down into the soil as it's reabsorbed by a snowdrop. With a decomposition time of 4 weeks and a snowdrop growth time of, say, 3 months, it could take as little as 4 months for you to become a petal. And when that petal is eaten by an animal, that atom becomes part of the animal's body and the whole process begins again.
So what's with all the brushing? Well, I'm going to find out by hanging up my toothbrush for 5 days.
Okay, this is it. This is truly grim. This is the last time I'm going to brush my teeth for the next 5 days, so don't come anywhere near me. It's day 3. This is the 3rd day I haven't brushed my teeth, and people are avoiding me. People are crossing the streets as I walk past. The smell is becoming unbearable almost. Are your teeth clean?
Yeah.
Let's see. What do you think about Daddy's teeth?
Yucky.
Oh dear, it's now day 4. Day 4 of not being able to brush my teeth. And I think they're looking pretty horrible. They certainly feel fuzzy and grim. Have a smell?
Oh, it's stinky.
This is horrible. Everywhere I go, I kind of feel people are looking at me funny. More funny than normal.
OK, no sugary snacks and my teeth haven't turned black, but they are a bit furry. To find out what's going on, I've come to Liverpool University's dental school. They're pioneering a new camera that reveals the damage done by 5 days of neglect. Not rot, but plaque.
It's quite difficult to see the plaque because it's white on white teeth.
Yeah.
If you look very closely, you can see some.
I'm a bit worried about that bit. What's
here.
that bit of last night's curry?
I think that's a bit of food debris. Yes, yeah. But if we have a look at a different image we've taken with our special camera, which is using fluorescence now, then we can see some really quite heavy areas of plaque.
So this orange stuff, that's plaque?
That's plaque.
I mean, that's quite a lot, isn't it?
So there's really quite a lot there.
Plaque is down to those same bacteria that produce acid. Faced with a filthy mouth, they go wild, billions of them forming a sticky, gooey mess all over your teeth. It won't harm your teeth like acid does, but if you don't brush away the plaque, it eventually hardens, and this time it's your gums that pay the price.
So this is all stuff that's taken up residence in my mouth over the last 5 days. We've got it hooked up live to the microscope, and I'm looking, and there's stuff, I can actually see things wriggling about. What's that there?
These long, slender, cigar-shaped rods are probably Fusobacterium. We've got probably some streptococci here, the round-shaped bacteria, but we've also got some of these motile bacteria likely to be spirochetes.
It's a wonder I'm still alive, Sue. I mean, they're like kind of little tadpoles swimming around.
They are.
I thought I could feel something in my mouth. I thought there was something odd going on. So really, this is the cause of all of our problems, isn't it?
It is.
What we can try and simulate now is if you get struck by lightning and it goes through your core.
But this is actually quite dangerous, this bit now.
Don't
hurt.
do this at home.
OK.
Now, just to reassure everyone, this is not connected yet, even though I plugged it in, until these 2 buttons are pressed.
OK.
OK, so that's a gherkin.
Yeah.
And so imagine that's you get hit by lightning, and now it's going to the core of your being. So first of all, you see it boiling quite quickly, because there's huge amounts of current going through there. So it's boiling up, steam's coming out, and then it starts breaking down the very fabric of the gherkin, which could be you. And then the temperatures go...
to boil, isn't it?
Yeah.
Come on.
Oh, yes.
There we go.
There we go. And then it's so hot, you're getting actually light coming off it, and that light is a particular orange-yellow, which you might recognise, Dara.
That's street light. That's
Yeah.
sodium light.
And it's exactly the same way. I mean, that is sodium from the salt in the gherkin.
Wow. Okay.
Is it?
Ooh, ow, wow.
It's it's quite a few thousand degrees probably inside there.
Is it okay to go in? Is that all going to be all right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the effect it'll actually have on
Yeah,
flesh.
yeah. So-
but the path, is there a vivid way of seeing the actual path?
So the thing is, why does lightning happen? Because it's in a high charge trying to get through the air. The air is an insulator, so how does it get through? So it has to break down the air and make it into a conductor. And there's a really fantastic demo which I would like to show you, which sort of reproduces that situation. So this is, let's say this is a piece of air. It's actually perspex, but they're both insulators. And we've irradiated it with electrons. So there's lots of electrons in here. You can't see them, but there's high voltage in there. Now, they've got nowhere to go because this is an insulator. They can't get out. And it's the same with lightning. So there's a huge amount of charge. It's looking for somewhere to go. So the electrons are sitting quite happily at the moment in rest. So how do we shake them out of that? Yeah. So we need to give them a high potential, basically a concentration point. And I'm going to hit it with a hammer. OK, let's bring the lights down so we can see this is as dramatic as possible. Oh, that's quite moody, actually. You tell me when. We're ready to go. OK. Oh! Now, although that looks like just a crack, it's not. If you look at it very... See the little light? There's more lightning still happening, yeah. Occurring as it goes along. Because it's still giving paths to the electrons. My God, how long does that go on for? It can go on for hours. Because bits of the electrons that are marooned in this insulator are finding this path which it created by breaking down this insulator, so melting it, basically, vaporising it. So the little holes are what you see here, feathery holes. And these patterns, you saw that on the people, who were burned, you saw that on their skin, because that's exactly the same process. Here's the same effect in slow motion. So just hitting it with the hammer creates that effect. Let's see it. And that was the flash. That is the flash of huge temperatures. That's tens of thousands of degrees centigrade, because it vaporizes the insulator. And then that creates that fern-like pattern, and all the electrons are channeled down to Earth, which is why this hammer was connected to it. That is incredible. And it's still going, yes.
If you've ever watched the likes of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre or Deliverance or The Hills Have Eyes, then you'll probably think you have a good idea of what happens when humans inbreed, namely psychosis, murderous intentions, webbed fingers, and some pretty mean banjo playing skills. But what's the reality? Does inbreeding really lead to deformities and nasty diseases? Could inbreeding actually be a good thing? As I'm sure you know, inbreeding is defined as mating between organisms closely related through common ancestry. On the flip side, what most of us do, I hope, is the mating between unrelated organisms, or outbreeding. Time for a super quick romp through genetics. Now, the biological aim of mating is the combining of genetic material, the shuffling of DNA from two parents into one offspring. Yep. Sorry guys, at its essence, mating is that romantic. Now, our DNA, our instruction manual for life, is bundled up into chunks, chapters, if you will, called chromosomes. Pretty much all of us have 23 pairs of chromosomes in most of our cells, one of the pair from your mum and one of the pair from your dad. And what you get from them determines things like your eye colour or your blood type, even dimples. It works like this. Within each of those chromosomes, those chapters of the instruction manual, are specific sentences that instruct your body what type of eye colour to produce or determine what blood type you are. These short sections of DNA that code for these specific things are called genes. But genes can come in different forms, different alleles, and which alleles you have determines whether you have, say, blue or brown eyes. On one of the chromosomes you get from your mum, you're going to have one type of gene for eye colour, and you'll partner that with the eye colour gene you get from your dad. It's the combination of those two genes that determines your eye colour. If you have the brown gene allele from either your mum or your dad, you'll have brown eyes, because that type of allele is dominant. However, the blue eyes allele is what's known as recessive. You need that recessive allele from both your mum and your dad to have blue eyes. With inbreeding, the two people mating are blood relations, so their gene pools are going to be much more similar. If one has the recessive allele for cystic fibrosis, it's more likely that their blood relative mating partner may also carry it. So the odds of their child having the two recessive alleles that predisposes them to cystic fibrosis is much greater. That is why inbreeding increases the chance of congenital defects. According to the World Health Organization, first cousin unions, that's producing children with any of the children of your uncles and aunts, nearly doubles the risk for neonatal and childhood death, intellectual disability and other anomalies. Whole populations that indulge in it, think of captive animals in zoos for example, begin to decrease in size as healthy mates become in short supply. That's known as inbreeding depression, and scientists have been able to closely study the effect of it by looking at the royals. Now, before you start tapping away in the comments box, I'm not pointing fingers at a modern monarchy. I'm talking about ancient dynasties like the Egyptian pharaohs, or back in the Persian dynasty where brother-sister and parent-child marriages were not uncommon, usually to maintain power within bloodlines. A more recent example of this phenomena is one of the most important royal houses of Europe, the House of Habsburg. For generations, half-siblings, cousins, and even uncles and nieces were regularly marrying each other. This inbreeding culminated with the birth of Charles II of Spain in 1661. Get this, his mother was his dad's niece, and his grandmother was also his aunt. Charles II suffered from numerous disabilities and congenital abnormalities. He didn't speak until he was 4, walk until he was 8, and his deformed jaw meant he could barely chew. In his later life, insanity set in, and at one point he demanded the bodies of his family be exhumed so he could look upon their corpses. When he finally died, at the young age of 38, his autopsy stated that his body did not contain a drop of blood. His heart was the size of a peppercorn, his lungs corroded, his intestines rotten and gangrenous, his head full of water. Oh, and he had a single testicle that was as black as coal. Cracking story, but worth noting that not all these things can be fully put down to inbreeding. Pituitary hormone deficiency and distal renal tubular acidosis are caused by recessive alleles and could explain a fair few of those symptoms I just described, though it's very rare to be afflicted with both simultaneously. Right, that's the downsides of inbreeding. Are there any benefits? Well, if you're into laboratory testing, then you'll like your mice to be inbred because you want them to be as genetically alike as possible. And it's big business. One company in America has over 100 different strains of inbred mice you can purchase. But what about outside the lab? Well, there are some creatures in the animal kingdom that have made incest part of their life cycle in order to ensure reproductive success. A particular adult female Hawaiian mite keeps its eggs inside her until they have reached maturity. The first few eggs to hatch are male, and then they lay in wait outside their mother's genital opening for their little sisters to hatch, and then they instantly get down to business. And how about dog breeding? There, inbreeding is deliberately used to try and develop prized traits in new puppies like size or fur type. I should say though actually that breeds aren't scientifically defined. They're just categories created by dog breeders to describe groupings of dogs by characteristics. However, a recent scientific study headed by Professor David Balding showed that a large proportion of pedigree dogs do suffer illnesses caused by recessive alleles, including heart disease, abnormal development of hip joints and deafness. The study also showed that due to dog inbreeding, a population of 20,000 boxer dogs only had the genetic variety of 70-ish. So the issues around this kind of dog breeding do far outweigh any perceived benefits. Us humans have been doing the same with all sorts of livestock for thousands of years too, without knowledge of how inbreeding can be used to increase milk yields or create the fluffiest sheep for wool. Human civilization might not have made it as far as it has. But in general, where humans are concerned, our advice here at BritLab is, if you're looking for love, find someone you have a lot in common with, but draw the line at DNA. Hey there, head squeezers. It's time to tackle some of the brilliant questions that you guys have been sending us in. Thank you so much. Mr. James May is actually off shopping today. He's realised that he is so close to getting the world record for the man who holds the most flowery shirts that he's gone off to pick up a few more. But don't worry, I'm here and there's an absolute brilliant trio of very interesting questions today. I'm going to be talking about inhaling helium, earwax, and an absolute brilliant question. Are zebras black with white stripes or white with black stripes? We'll tackle that one. So let's get cracking. The first one that was dropped into a comment below one of our videos was from A11 Damn Day, who asked what actually happens when you inhale helium. Really interesting one. So a lot of you, I'm sure, have been at a party and you've grabbed the old inflatable balloon and you've taken a good old breath and done your best impression of a chipmunk. But what is happening? What is going on? Well, it's all down to something called timbre. Now, timbre is what can make two different instruments playing exactly the same note at the same volume sound completely different. And our voices have very different timbres as well. Now, as I'm speaking, air is coming out of my lungs and it's setting a little V-shaped load of chords, my vocal cords in my larynx vibrating. That then starts the air molecules in my upper vocal tract vibrating. That creates resonant frequencies, and then by changing the shape of my mouth and moving my tongue, that changes the sound that we hear as human speech. Now, sound waves travel through air at a constant speed of 330 meters per second. But here's the thing. Helium is a lot less dense than air, so the sound waves can travel through it a lot quicker, right up to about 900 meters per second, and that changes the timbre of your voice. So when you suck in some of that helium and you start speaking, your voice goes a little bit like this.
A little bit funny and high-pitched. Okay, cut. That's enough of the effect. Thanks, guys.
That is exactly what's going on. Now, I've also been asked to say to you guys, it's probably not a good idea to breathe in helium because it can cause injury and sometimes death. And we find that that definitely puts the dampener on a good party. Next up, we've got one from Jake Geiger, who asks, what is earwax? This is a brilliant question. I love those icky, yucky kind of questions. So that yellow, sticky substance, it can also be known as cerumen, and it's produced in the sebaceous gland just inside the ear canal, inside your ear. So what is it? Well, it's mainly made of dead skin cells. But if you were to mix it up, what are the other ingredients in the recipe? Well, you've got keratin, you've got long-chain fatty acids, you've got squalene, alcohols and cholesterol. So it's a whole hodgepodge of stuff that's gone in there. And yes, it may be all sticky and a bit horrible, but it actually serves a really important function or set of functions. First of all, it moisturizes your ear canal, which is really important because without earwax, they would be all dry and itchy. Second of all, it stops water and dust and stuff like that getting into your ear canal, which is very important. And third and finally, it's also got antibacterial properties, so it can fight infection. So there you go, you will never look at earwax the same way again. I promise you, it's quite interesting stuff. Now on to the final question, and it is a belter. This is from YouTube user Got Some Loot. And it is, are zebras black with white stripes or are they white with black stripes? This is a proper head squeezing question and I love it. First of all, we should answer the question of why do zebras actually have stripes in the first place? And there are a few interesting theories for this. One of my faves is that the alternating pattern of black and white has actually been shown to deflect up to about 70% of the heat that falls on a zebra. And the second is down to camouflage. Now, I know that you guys are probably yelling at the screen right now and saying, how, Greg, can a black and white zebra be camouflaged in the plains of Africa? Good point. The thing is, zebras are pack, they're like communal animals. They like to go together and pack in herds. And that means that there's a load of black and white next to each other. And ethologists, they're a group of people who study animal behavior. They say that that could create a really weird optical illusion so that for any prey like lions or whatever, when they look at that, they get totally freaked out. So there's one answer for you. Without further ado, let's answer the question. Are they black with white stripes or white with black stripes? Drum roll, please. The majority of scientists say that they are black with white stripes. Yes, if you look at a zebra fetus, it's black right up until the last stages of development, which is when the white stripes start to appear. And it's actually a genetic process called selective pigmentation. Now what happens is that the kind of predominant actual colour pigment is black, and it's areas that are underpigmented that give the white stripes and like the white underbelly. If you were to shave off all the fur from a zebra, which we definitely do not condone here at Head Squeeze, what you would get is a black-skinned, dark-skinned zebra.
So what's going on inside that defiled bottle of non-branded cola? Well, do you even know what cola actually is? Check out what it says on the side of a bottle or can. It's a caffeinated, flavoured and carbonated vegetable extract drink. But what gives cola its special twang? It's probably phosphoric acid, a food additive, E338, used to make things more, well, acidy. It makes stuff taste tangy. It's a good source of nutrients though, it's used in crop fertiliser too. It's that acid in the cola that's changing how the calcium-carrying protein in the milk behaves. That stuff at the bottom is essentially curdled milk. Milk is a bunch of fat, protein and sugar all drifting around in the water. The main protein is casein. Casein binds to the calcium in the water. It's how we get our calcium through drinking milk. Without casein, the calcium wouldn't be soluble. These special balls of casein drift around in the liquid like flakes in a snow globe. It's what makes milk white. When the acid content of the water increases, say hungry bacteria eat the delicious sugary lactose in the milk, they create a stinky lactic acid as a byproduct. This new pH level allows the casein to start to clump, and once it's clumpy, it's denser than the water and falls to the bottom of the bottle. This clotting and clumping property of casein is pretty useful actually, because it clots in the stomach due to the acids present there. The clot can stay there longer, the proteins being slowly digested. That's why vegetarians love their cheeses, and why baby mammals have an enzyme to help proteins from their mother's milk to clot in their tummies. And why humans extract that enzyme from calves' tummies to make cheeses. So, where's that beautiful brown colour gone? Well, that's caramel colour. Because the pH has changed in the milk with the added cola, the caramel behaves differently, just like the casein does. It binds to the clumps of protein and ends up at the bottom too. Essentially, think of the caramel colour and the casein as hyperactive kids, and the acid the teacher entering the classroom. The kids behave differently in the presence of the teacher, and then everyone eats some cheese or something. A lot of explanations online for this take a simpler route, saying it's the phosphoric acid simply binding to the calcium. Well, that's probably happening too, but it's missing out the fact that all that protein is the white stuff in the milk that you're seeing drop to the bottom of the bottle. There's only one way to find out. Bottoms up. Just a tiny bit clumpy. It's got certain tangy notes to it still. And yeah, very lumpy from these, what I presume are bits of calcium and bits of protein floating around. But overall, not too bad.
Juice, Gear, Stacker, Arnold's, Roids. No, these are not the members of my new boy band. These are some of the street names for anabolic steroids, the drugs favoured by bodybuilders to give their biceps a boost. I hope Jack has improved them. You've no doubt heard about steroids in the press, how athletes have been caught with them in their systems, how people once skinny have suddenly and remarkably beefed up their bodies. But what's the big deal? What do steroids actually do to the body? And why have they got such a bad rap? First things first, let's get our definitions right. Because chemically speaking, a steroid is any organic molecule with 17 carbon atoms arranged into 4 rings. Other elements and structures glued onto those, there's actually no glue, determine exactly what kind of steroid you have. But at the basic level, they all have those 4 carbon rings. And there are loads and loads of different steroids that occur naturally and have different functions in the human body. Cholesterol, for instance, is a steroid that's found in all of our cell membranes. And the male hormone testosterone is a steroid too, which you'll want to remember for later. Steroids are typically prescribed as anti-inflammatory drugs to treat things like asthma and irritable bowel syndrome. But these are not the roids we're looking for. The much maligned muscle-maximising molecules we're talking about are anabolic steroids, or, if you prefer even more of a mouthful, anabolic androgenic steroids. Anabolic steroids are basically a group of molecules that have a very similar structure and function to the male sex hormone testosterone. Hormones are effectively chemical messengers in our bodies, travelling around in the blood and attaching onto cellular receptors to trigger specific processes in specific locations, and testosterone is no exception. The sex hormone is well known for triggering the development of masculine features and characteristics. It's said to have both androgenic effects, that's producing male features like facial hair, and anabolic effects, stimulating muscle and bone growth by making proteins. Men naturally produce a lot more testosterone than women, which explains why men are usually more manly. But there's a limit to how much testosterone the body can produce naturally. And that means there's a limit to muscular growth. Time to enter synthetic anabolic steroids. These substances are prescribed by doctors to treat wasting diseases like cancer and AIDS, or stimulate male puberty. But they've also been adopted illegally by the body and performance-conscious sporting community in an effort to attain the supposedly ideal muscular figure. These steroid users will routinely inject themselves or swallow tablets containing 10 to 100 times the medical dose, with the goal of getting bigger, leaner and stronger. So let's take a look at how that actually works. Thanks. When we work out, we put strain on our muscles. Our skeletal muscle, that's the muscles that makes our bones move, like our biceps or our glutes or our calves, is made of muscle fibers that slide past each other when the muscles contract and expand. If we lift a weight that's just a little bit too heavy, trust me this is, some of those fibers are physically broken and need to be fixed so that the muscle can function properly again. For this, extra proteins come in and reinforce the fibers, making them physically thicker, and the muscle increases in size. The process is known as muscle hypertrophy, but it's normally limited because natural levels of testosterone aren't high enough to allow much protein to be created. But taking anabolic steroids changes that. With more testosterone-like chemicals around, and provided that there are enough building blocks, enough amino acids in the blood, much more reinforcing protein can be created, making the muscles bigger and bigger. Interestingly, the steroids won't work on their own without the right exercise and a protein-rich diet. Scientists cunningly found this out by subjecting rats to different steroid levels and different types of exercise, including, unbelievably, a specially designed rat squat machine. So you take the steroids and your muscles get bigger. Sounds good, right? Well, injecting yourself with testosterone substitutes can have some unexpected and unwanted side effects. Let's not forget that these anabolic steroids are hormone messengers that travel all around the body, not just that particular muscle that you want to upgrade. So by pumping such large doses into your body, the chemicals can play havoc with your normal bodily functions. And I'm not exaggerating here. The list of possible adverse effects is long and scary. So you've got acne, high blood pressure, blood clots, baldness, liver tumours, breast developing in men, facial hair in women, erectile dysfunction, even shrunken testicles, all caused by one very potent molecule interfering with the way things are normally done. High doses of anabolic steroids are even reported to have psychiatric effects, as the chemicals affect nerve cells in the brain, leading to bursts of manic aggression called roid rage. Some hardcore steroid users attempt to dodge these grisly side effects by carefully controlling their steroid taking routine. One technique, cycling, where users take regular breaks in their self-medication. Another is stacking, where they combine several different anabolic steroids. And pyramiding, that involves gradually increasing the dose over time. But the one tiny problem with all of these routines is that none of them have been scientifically proven to mitigate side effects whatsoever. In fact, the scientific understanding of steroid use is still so incredibly limited we don't really know how these drugs affect the body as a whole. So if you needed any extra persuading not to do illegal drugs, then the potential for uncontrollable, unpredictable, and possibly even irreversible physical and mental changes should be it. Plus, it's just possible to look too ripped, right? That's my excuse when I fancy chocolate anyway. Alcohol. In the immortal words of Homer Simpson, it is both the cause of and the solution to all of life's problems. But what is actually happening as you get drunk? First things first, what is it in there that is getting you drunk? Despite the difference in taste, cost, classiness, the active ingredient in almost all alcoholic drinks is the same: ethanol. Whether it's a shot of spirits, whether it's half a pint of beer, inside there is about 10 millilitres of ethanol. In the UK, we call that 1 unit of alcohol, and it's the amount of ethanol, amount of alcohol, that an adult can process in 1 hour. And even a 125 millilitre glass of wine has around about 1.5 units in it. Men are recommended to drink between 3 and 4 units maximum a day, and for women, that's around about 2 to 3. Okay, so it's the ethanol that's getting you drunk, but how does it actually get into your system? Well, when I take a sip of beer, the ethanol is absorbed through the lining of my mouth. And it turns out you can actually absorb alcohol through any of your mucous membranes, which explains the American fraternity phenomenon of butt chugging. Yep, that is exactly as you think. But please don't give it a go, guys. It is so much easier to overdose from alcohol if it doesn't go via your digestive tract, as we found in 2004 with a guy in Texas who actually died from pouring sherry into that uncomfortable place. Now, once my drink has gone down the right way, about 20% of that alcohol is absorbed in my stomach, the rest in my small intestines. How fast you actually absorb that alcohol depends on things like how strong the drink is, whether you've eaten, and also whether it's fizzy, because carbonation actually speeds up the absorption process, which is why if I drink champagne, now what am I talking about? More likely Prosecco, it goes right to my head. Once it hits your bloodstream, alcohol starts messing with your brain. It enhances the effect of a neurotransmitter called GABA, gamma-aminobutyric acid. Now, what that normally does is it inhibits nerves from sending messages. So if alcohol enhances the effect of GABA, less messages are sent by those nerves and you're slow to respond and you start feeling a little bit woozy. Alcohol also messes with your central nervous system, leaving you uncoordinated, and it slows down your breathing rate, your heart rate, and your brain function. Now, all that sounds rather miserable. What about the more positive effects you often see as people get more and more tipsy? Well, alcohol also affects your central cortex, making you feel less inhibited and more free, and more like it would be a really good idea to go and have a go at some karaoke. The thing is though, despite alcohol being one of the world's most popular drugs, scientists still can't agree on what the positive reinforcement must be that makes us want to keep on drinking. And they even argue on where the pleasant effects come from. Some think it must be from the metabolic breakdown of the alcohol, not the stuff itself. Time for the big question though. Why does alcohol make you pee so much? Well, you normally rely on vasopressin, an anti-diuretic hormone, to control your peeing frequency. But alcohol stops you making vasopressin, hence you pee more. And all that peeing may explain why you feel so dehydrated the morning after the night before. Now, I thought that part of that horrible hangover feeling came from the reduced electrolytes you get from being dehydrated. But that may not actually explain all the effects of a hangover, because one study has actually found that the electrolyte levels for people who were hungover were very similar to people who weren't hungover. So what could explain that terrible hangover the morning after? You know what? We just don't know. It could be low blood sugar levels, it could be the toxic byproducts of alcohol breakdown, it could be an inflammatory immune response. Nasty. Maybe the hangover, like the alcohol's effects themselves, will always remain a mystery. Now for the somber bit. In the UK, 1 in 3 men and 1 in 6 women will develop a health problem related to alcohol. So I'd suggest taking it slow and allowing days to recover after drinking. So with all the potential pitfalls, why do we drink at all? Well, it looks like almost everything drinks. from monkeys to moose and even elephants, although they're far too big to get a buzz from anything they can find naturally in the wild. Perhaps humans first discovered drinking in the natural world by eating fermented fruit. There's even a theory that the entire beginning of civilization was based on drink. Beer encouraged social bonding, but it required cooperation, farming and infrastructure. It's a nice idea. I'll drink to that.